The Bobby Pickles podcast is brought to you by one sponsor and one sponsor only, and that is my t-shirt company, Bobby Pickles T-Shirt Company. That's the DBA. That's the Doing Business As. Technically, it's Fat Enzo Incorporated. Fat Enzo is my big, fat, awesome dog who's right by my side right now as I record this podcast, just chilling. He's half lab and half... well, actually, I don't know what the hell he is, but he's most definitely Chow. He's got the big fat Chow face, and he has the black spotted tongue. Anyway, Fat Enzo Incorporated. We do business as Bobby Pickles T-Shirt Company, though. All right, and this company consists of a couple awesome illustrators and myself, Bobby, my awesome copywriter, business partner, Martini, and our idiotic, globe-trotting, self-righteous, conspiracy theory advocate, whoremongering, sociopathic friend, Beatty. Anyway, history, politics, pop culture, people and places of which we like to satire. That is what we do. Also, we do custom t-shirt designs as well, and we can do it for corporate stuff, or we can do it for outlandish things like your family reunion. We can make it funny. Whatever you want, give us a call, 866-970-9997, or go to bobbypickles.com. Today we're going to talk to James Goi Jr. He wrote a fantastic book entitled How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. This is something that I am keenly into, and my buddy Bob McManus would enjoy as well. I tried to get the fella on here, but he didn't want to co-host today, but he'll be on very soon. Anyway, I'd just like to introduce James Goi Jr. in the Bobby Pickles Podcast, Episode 4.
Bobby Pickles Podcast. He always says, "That's me." With that look on his face, he'll talk about anything. Tattoos, t-shirts, politics, history, and hot sauce on everything. Bobby Pickles. Pop culture, documentaries, conspiracy theories, sarcasm, and beer. It's a conversation, start listening, cause we're all here. Bobby Pickles Podcast.
That's me! Welcome to the Bobby Pickles Podcast. Today we're talking to a gentleman by the name of James Goi Jr., and he's written a book on how to make money. It's actually called How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. So it's pretty interesting. Let's get right into it. Let's call this guy.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Goi?
Yes, this is James.
Hi, James. How are you?
Okay. Nice to talk to you, Bobby.
Very nice to talk to you, sir. Thank you for being with me on the Bobby Pickles podcast. I really appreciate it. So my name's Rob Piccarillo, but my warrior name is Bobby Pickles. That's what people call me, and that's what I go by my podcast. And your name is
James Goi Jr.
James Goi Jr.
Right.
Sir, you're not. Now listen, I'm not trying to get too personal or anything, but the last name Goi, you're not Jewish by any chance, are you?
The Goi is actually a shortened Italian name, and I don't know. We don't know what it used to be.
You know what Goi is, right?
A non-Jewish person.
Yeah, Gentile.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what it used to be. It comes from Italy, and the parents changed it when you're going through Ellis Island and stuff like that, or whoever came through, whoever the ancestors were.
Yeah, whoever the ancestors were.
Nice.
Who knows? The name probably had like 24 letters or something, and the I-O or the O-I might have been the last two.
It was probably G-I-O. That's actually my mother's name. My mother's name is Joe. G-I-O. That's funny. But anyway, let's get into this. So you've written a book called How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. And I thought that was so interesting because, myself, I want money. I'm going to say it, But, they always say that whenever you're doing, you have to do it because you actually genuinely enjoy it. And then money will come to you, right?
Well, that is one way, and it's a very good way. And I have a chapter in my book on what we call right livelihood, which is doing work that you love doing and that you're well suited to and really born to do in some cases. But we can attract money in other ways, certainly, and that's the ideal, and that's the ideal to move towards. But we can, using mind power techniques alone or in concert with other techniques, mind power techniques, we can attract money to us through metaphysical principles, whether or not we're doing our right livelihood at the moment.
All right, please teach me. I want you to be my guru. Teach me how to use mind power to attract money into my life, please.
Okay, well,
What can we do? What can I do?
Well, you've taken the first step, and that is that you are open to the concept. Some people, it's just a little bit beyond them. So just by being open to the concept and desirous of learning more and the willingness to apply what you learn, that's a huge hurdle. I don't want to make light of it because a lot of people never get to that point where you are right now. And the other thing is something you've got going for you already. The first chapter in my book is on desire. And I'd like to read a quote from the first page of that chapter. I open each chapter with a quote.
Go right ahead, James. Give me the quote. I love quotes.
Okay, well, this one's from Robert Collier, and I love quotes too, by the way.
Who is Robert Collier?
Well, he was a writer back in the early 20s, and he wrote a lot of books. He often would use analogies from nature, so he's quite an interesting writer. But this particular book is called The Secret of the Ages, and it was first published in 1926. And what he said was, desire is the great moving power of the mind, that which excites into action the will and powers of the individual. It is at the bottom of action, emotion, or expression. End quote. And that is very powerful information there.
Can you sum that up into words, into like layman's terms?
Basically, for the layman, listen, layman, you do not even step out of bed in the morning. You don't even scratch your nose. You certainly don't find a spouse or pick up the newspaper or go online to look for a job or even pick up a spoon or a glass of water, to feed and give yourself liquids. You don't do anything. I mean, let's just look at how basic that is, that you do not even move a finger. Everything you do, everything you think, every action you take, even actions you plan to take or envision taking or plan for 30 years and then finally, get around to doing or something, it's all based on desire. And to emphasize the importance of desire, number one, and also because logistically it's the best place to put it, desire is the very first chapter in my book. And I sense that you've stated it. You have the desire. You want the money.
That's right. The first step is admitting, right? Like if you're in a 12-step program or something like that. But yes, I do have the desire to make money.
And let me make a quick distinction here, though. And that is, I like to make a little bit of a distinction between making money and attracting money.
Okay, what is the distinction?
Okay, now let's say I clean out my garage and go to the swap meet this weekend and sell a bunch of stuff. I mean, that's a no-brainer. People are going to buy some of it. They won't buy some other stuff. They'll dicker on the price. That's making money. I cleaned out my garage. I went to the swap meet and made some money. If I go to work tonight, let's say I'm a security guard. I'm going to work 8 hours, and I'm going to make some money. I'm going to earn some money.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now attracting money is different. When you're using mind power to attract money, you may and may not have a definite path or way to do that, but money can come to you in amazing ways when you leave the ways and means open. And money can come to you through your job. You're working the mind power techniques to attract money, and you attract to yourself through your mind and through your efforts of coming up with a nice resume and whatever, a job that pays you more, or you get a raise at work or whatever. That mind play is in play in all of that. So there's a lot of gray area where you're attracting money and earning it or making it at the same time. But you can purely attract money without having to concern yourself with how it's going to be, and sometimes without even having to do anything for it. It's really a very powerful process, and money can come to us in ways that we know not of if we're open to it and allow the universe to bring us the fruits of what we're creating mentally.
That's right. I believe in the universe too. I really do. I feel I am right on the same level I feel as you are, James. And I heard somebody else say it like this. It's basically like a boomerang. Like when you put it out into the universe and you show the desire for something, right? It's like a boomerang out into the universe, and it's going to come back to you. And at some point, and this individual who says this, he says you don't know when it's going to come back. It can come back whenever. You just don't know. And you have to be prepared for when it comes back. But anyway, I just had that thought.
Yeah, that's all very true. And quite often when, let's say we're putting out good, we're doing good deeds, or we're putting out positive energy, we're putting out a benevolent frequency, the energy we emit, we're energy beings and we're always emitting energy. When we do that type of thing tends to attract to us good things. But we don't always know, oh, I helped that old lady cross the street last week, and so now I just got an extra refund, from something. Or this guy pulled over and helped me get my car going. You don't know where it comes from. But what you start to notice is that overwhelmingly all this good is coming to you, even though you may not be able to put it to a particular act or a particular action taken.
So if we have positive thoughts, it will all of a sudden you're going to be attracting money just by thinking positively. Is that what you're saying? Or I mean, yeah. It's really hard to be positive all the time, right? We all get caught up in our own lives, and things happen, and we get negative. It's very, very hard for me to always remain positive. However, it is a goal of mine to try to be positive as much as I can. But other circumstances come into play, and I feel like it affects me, and and sometimes I'll be negative. And those are definitely not good days, though, and you definitely attract bad things when you're negative, I do find.
Right, and especially if you're thinking, if your negativity has to do with money in any way, finances, the economy at large, if you're pessimistic, fearful about those things, specifically about money, you're attracting, conditions of lack. But any negativity, it's not like, oh, I'm very positive about all this, but it's just the money that I'm negative about. When we think negatively or we think positively, we're setting up certain pathways, in the neuron connections in our brains. We're putting out and manufacturing in our brains certain types of chemicals, and these chemicals become like a drug, and we become habituated to them and used to them. And that's why in the beginning it can seem like such an insurmountable obstacle to overcome negative thinking. But here's what I want to share with you about it, is that, guess what? I think negatively too. I'm the guy that wrote this book. I'm not on 100% of the time, but here's the thing. I'm on 95% of the time or more. I came up with the analogy the other day. I forget what the purpose was, but I was writing a response to an email I received, and I'm going to actually post it in the next month or two in my e-zine, my responses. And I came up with this analogy of the positive money mindset. That's chapter 4 in my book, and we can talk about that concept certainly. I came up with the analogy of a positive money mindset horse. Okay,
yeah.
If you're up this horse, you have your positive money mindset. Now,
yeah, let's get into that. We're going to get into that right now. Because I do find that you were saying, like, you have to be positive about all kinds of different things, but more specifically, it's about the negative mindset when it comes to money. And this is something that I do and I have done, especially in the economy the way it is. Being a college graduate from a decent school and not being able to attain like a college level position with the way that the economy is. It's just really just short. There's not a lot of job opportunities out there. And I've even found myself like discussing things with my girlfriend, because we both live together. We both, as a team, we have to pull our money together to live and whatnot. And I'm very negative about how much money that I would be making, and I wanted more. And it would always be like, and she would even say, because she's somewhat of a hippie type person, and she really has like gotten me to the point of where I'm thinking about the universe and things like that. And not to lump you into being like a hippie or anything like that. I'm just saying that that's how she is. But I've come a long way because of her, and she was the one who first would be telling me about, don't think so negatively about money.
Right. And you're very Very, very fortunate, because most people I try to help and become aware of, they are actually the most positive person in their home, and everyone else is tending to drag them down. So for you to have someone in your actual living space who is actually pulling you up is invaluable. So, I over the years, I would eat different kinds of diets. I'm always into health food and raw food, and I try all different things. And many years ago, like almost 30 years ago or something, I was back east and I was talking to my grandfather. And of course, I was on one of my diets. And I said, well, Kathy eats like this too. And he got so serious and he looked at me and he said, oh, she eats like you?
Oh my God, how do you eat? Can you tell me about what the diet was?
Well, that changes. That evolves all the time. But let me tell you. He said, oh, she eats like you? He said, don't get rid of her. And so I thought of him. I thought of that. I haven't thought of it in a long time. When you told me that your girlfriend is positive, she's tuned into the universe, she knows about the power of the mind, and I heard my grandfather telling you, oh, don't get rid of her.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's a really, God, I'm a horrible person, but I've gotten a lot better though, because I feel like I'm at least open-minded and I'm willing to change, I'm willing to listen to what other people's insights are. I've been getting into Buddhism and stuff, and I love the fact that the Buddha would say this mantra, I am better than nobody, but I'm beneath nobody. We're all human beings. We're all going to die someday. Everybody's the same. And right. I think that's really a good thing to think about, because that's like a wall that I feel like some people maybe put up when it comes to attracting money. Maybe they don't feel like they're good enough to attract money. And I feel like everybody has the ability to attract money. And you just have to be out there and you have to do it. And you have to put it in play. Like you say, have the desire to do it,
Right. I mean, what you're basically talking about or touching on there is self-image. And I do cover that because it's very important. It's chapter 18 in the book. And if I can read you another quote that I open that chapter with.
Read it.
Okay, this is John K. Williams from a book called The Wisdom of Your Subconscious Mind, first published in 1964. And here's what Mr. Williams said. He said, your present situation, be it one of prosperity or poverty, of sickness or health, of self-confidence and social acceptance, or frustration and failure, is an exact reflection of your self-image, end quote. And so that's how important the self-image is as part of this overall mixture. But I will hasten to say that the mind power techniques themselves are so powerful that you can use them, and regardless of your self-image, you can attract money to yourself. I mean, the principles work. You do affirmations, you do visualization and things like this. But to consistently and from an even keel and from an emotional stability and to consistently over time attract a lot of money and have more good experiences around money than bad, that's when your self-image comes in. And to boil it all down to a tiny pinhead is that you want to see yourself not only as a person capable of attracting into your life what you need, but a person deserving of that. Right. And with those two key elements, you can overcome a lot of what is a major stumbling block or whatever for the average person out there.
Right, because we all deserve money, right? We all deserve to be able to live comfortably and stuff. But isn't the root of all evil money?
That's what people think. Actually, the statement, as I've read it, is the love of money is the root of all evil. And I think when we think of the love of money, it's like we put it above other things and people and morals and standards and laws and our own family, and we take advantage of people. And so in a way, the love of money or the improper chasing and trying to acquire money, both in action and in mental, machinations, yes, that can be said to be the root of all evil. So many terrible, terrible, terrible things that people do, they would not do were they not making money doing it. And
right, so that's not what you're teaching at all, right? You're teaching positivity.
Right, exactly. Because there's a woman somewhere.
James, don't you think you could be creating a monster though? If somebody had those things in mind and they were really diabolical and they're malevolent, and you could be teaching somebody how to attract money in their lives.
Yeah, the techniques themselves can be worked by anyone. there are practitioners out there, whatever they call themselves, knowingly or unknowingly, who use what I'll call black magic. They use mental and spiritual principles. They align themselves with universal energies in a negative way. But the universe is a self-governing process or mechanism. It has a self-governing mechanism built into it, and it is always striving for balance and on the positive side. So yes, somebody can use mind power in a negative way to attract money, but they are sowing the seeds of their own destruction. In like a Bernie Madoff, in the end, they go down in flames. They don't have the lifespan they would have had. The end of their life was a terrible mess. You look at somebody like Hitler or whatever, you're a dictator, you have all this power, but at the end, you're hiding in a hole in the ground somewhere. So, and you're not happy the entire time you're doing it anyway, because you're always fearful someone's going to knock you down, or you're going to get caught, or you're going to be displaced by someone more powerful. So it's really a self-destructive process. Now, if people really studied my book and they saw how benevolence and wanting the same things, like in the chapter I have at the end, the very last chapter, which kind of is an overall theme of the book, which is to radiate financial increase, then you're only spreading good in both your actions and deeds, and the universe is rewarding you richly. It's giving to you without holding back. Whereas the other way, yes, you can use these techniques in bad ways, but you are grabbing from and pulling out of the universe what you want in a very negative and destructive way. People who are negative and destructive and who want to take advantage of other people, they generally are not interested in this subject matter. And if they are, they're into some kind of black magic or something. The concept of radiating financial increase.
So basically, like, what are you trying to say here? So that you're just basically acting as if your financial situation is increasing and you're really good and you're doing well monetarily, that kind of thing?
Well, actually, I do have a chapter in the book on acting as if.
Okay.
And so one on speak as if, also one on think and feel as if. The as if principle is very powerful. We can touch on that. But this is something different. And here's a great quote by E.V. Ingram. And this person wrote a book called Wells of Abundance.
E.V. Ingram, can you tell me a little bit about him really quick before you do that?
I actually don't know much about E.V. Ingram, and I only have one book by this person at the moment.
Okay.
The thing is, I quote 160 authors in my book.
Do you really?
Yeah, and I had hundreds of quotes collected over a period of years.
How did you collect the quotes?
Well, actually, all 100% from physical books. Almost every single one I owned, and a few were checked out from the library. And then I would basically read the books. So I read hundreds of books while I was writing this book. But what this person said, and the book again, Wells of Abundance, 1938, was what you radiate determines what your manifest world will be. And so when we radiate, here, I'm going to read the first very short paragraph from the book. To radiate financial increase, you express the energy of prosperity with an emphasis on monetary gain. This energy goes out and helps others get the money they want and need. Then this energy returns to help you get the money you want and need. So when we radiate financial increase, we are in thought and deed wishing for, wanting, desiring financial increase, sufficient financial means and circumstances for other people.
Oh, nice.
For people we know, for friends, families, economic groups at large, or certain countries, or whatever it is our sincere desire that people won't be in lack, that people won't be in want. And we express that by, if someone says, oh, this economy is great, I think I'm going to end up losing my home, you try to add some positive to that. Well, yes, the economy is maybe not ideal, but people do rise up if we stay positive, and you start planting positive seeds. You see a homeless person and you're moved to give this person money. So you're radiating financial increase in a physical way. But here's the thing. I do give money to homeless people. I mean, I've given hundreds of dollars literally to homeless people. One woman, many, many years ago, when I was in my 30s and I was in my acting phase up in Burbank, and we were moving from Burbank, the acting phase was over, and there was a woman, we were at the dumpster looking for some boxes. And this woman was there too, and she says, "Oh, I'll help you." And she jumped in, and she was all joyful, happy. Her little kids were standing out there by the car, and she's finding us these boxes. And come to find out that the woman was homeless. She was living in that car with her children. And me and my friend, Kathy, we've been friends forever. We gave this woman literally like every last dollar we had on our pockets. Now, we did have ATM cards, so it's not like we couldn't go get a little more money, but we gave her literally hundreds of dollars. But when I give a person like that money, when I give a homeless person money, I radiate financial increase to them, but I don't see that they are in such lack that I have to, bless them with a dollar or $100 to help fill in for that lack. I see this person as being prosperous, as having desires, as attracting the money that they need, and I see me giving this money as just one more example of that. And you can look at any spectrum of the financial scale or graph and see that people are using mind power principles. A person a homeless person sitting with a cup, or I've seen them, there's one food store not far by, once in a while you see a guy out there playing the guitar and he's got his hat, or his guitar case out for money. Well, and they're basically living on the street. Okay, this person has a desire for more money, or he wouldn't be over there with his guitar case open playing songs. He has enough of a desire to get him out from under the bridge or wherever he slept to get over there and to do it. And then if you move into my chapter 2 in my book, belief, he believes that he's going to get some money, or he wouldn't be over there wasting what would turn out to be wasting his time. He wouldn't have the hat out if he didn't expect.
Well, what about those homeless people that don't want any help? They don't, because you know what? Let me tell you something. I have a homeless friend. I think I'm stupid though for this, but I really try to help this guy all the time. His name's Tony, and I actually had him on the podcast last week. And I've known him for 3 years now. He lives in Penn Station in New York City, which is a major hub for all the trains and everything. He lives like, I don't know where exactly. Well, he always just hangs around there. I managed a store inside of Penn Station when I first moved here. And that's how I came to know this gentleman. He would always come in charging his cell phone. And I thought it was so peculiar that this homeless man had a cell phone, had like a smartphone. He'd play around on Facebook all day. We're friends on Facebook. He does the social media stuff. I have like a family plan set up with my current cell phone provider. I give him a phone. It doesn't cost me a lot every month. It's really not, just the extra line and whatever the data plan is. But I don't mind paying that and letting Tony have a phone. But some people tell me I'm stupid because he doesn't try to help himself whatsoever. He really doesn't. And that's what I was trying to get the bottom of by having him on the podcast. I wanted to find out, why are you homeless, Tony? What is the reason for it? Are you, like, what do you want out of life? Do you have any aspirations of attracting any money in your life? I don't think he does.
Right. I have a friend, and I don't do most of my own. I'm kind of a recluse these days and a shut-in. I'm working a lot. And I have someone who does my shopping. And they're down in the beach area, and they know homeless people down there and all. They make a day of it when they go down there and whatever. And she told me, she said, I was talking to this, at different times, or this one or that one, and they said that people don't realize that they love their lives. They love being outside. They love not being on the grid. They make their little crafts, or they play their music down by the wall overlooking the beach, and people give them some money. They band together for safety. They have places to sleep. In San Diego, there's only a few nights a year where it's actually life-threatening, the cold at night, and then they open up shelters. And they don't want to go. They don't want an apartment. They don't want the computer. They don't want a car. They don't want the bills. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want to work for the man, however they put it. And guess what? That is perfectly fine with me. I mean, those people, you can almost look at, they're more free than other people who are working a grind 40 hours a week at a job they hate to have barely enough. These people seem to have enough and to be happy with their lives. They're spending their lives at the beach, where the average person can only go to the beach on the weekends or travel somewhere for a week once a year. And they're playing their music and they're hanging with their friends,
that sounds great, but I don't think in Tony's circumstance it's like that at all. He lives in the cold. He has to deal with the crazy weather, and he has to be outside. He has to sleep on trains sometimes and stuff. And but he is very negative. I tell you that he's a very negative mindset about him. God, I mean, I guess I can't really get into the psychology of Tony, but it's just interesting how you're bringing that up about trying to help the lady in the car with her kids. That seems like a nice thing to do. Did she ask you for help?
She did not ask for help. As a matter of fact, we gave her I don't know if it was like $20 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And she started going on and praising the high heavens about what a miracle it was. And she just filled us with so much joy. I mean, she's thanking God and she was so happy. She's filled us with so much joy ourselves that we just looked at each other and started emptying out our pockets and our wallets and purse because of her joy, of her gratitude. And gratitude is a very attractive power, not only from individuals, but from the universe. A lot of homeless people, they do have mental illness. That's another thing. But I want to know, for any listeners out there, and maybe you yourself, if you ever saw this story, which I believe Oprah had it on her show, but it was this film crew went out and they found a homeless guy and they said, listen, we want to do a documentary on what it's like to be homeless. We want to follow you around with the cameras and just see what your life is like. So he says, well, okay. And maybe they were paying him a little bit. I don't know what the story was. This was some years back. But what they did is they were setting the guy up. They took a suitcase with $100,000 cash and they planted it in a dumpster right before, he came around with the crew to get there. And they let the guy find the money. And they then said, well, wow, this is your money. You found it. It's fair and square or whatever. And so the guy got himself an apartment. He bought one of his friends. And he was a real negative kind of a guy when it comes to, the system and stuff. He was a vet. He was an ex-Vietnam probably vet and all this. And some people took advantage of him, but he was kind and he gave. He didn't hoard it all for himself. He tried to live with his family for a while, but he couldn't quite, there's too much negativity or whatever. But here's the point. I don't know how much time passed, but it wasn't like as much as you would think. And this guy was practically broke again. At the end, where they show you, where they write about what happened and they tell you so-and-so did this and that. And they said he was homeless again. He was living back under the bridge or wherever he was. And they say he doesn't say, he says he hasn't lost every last penny of what he had, but he won't say how much he has less. He lost almost all of it. And when you hear him talk later, it was all just negative about how life's not fair and all of this kind of thing. So, you can help people to a certain degree. The best way you can help them is to help them turn their minds around. That's what I'm passionate about.
Right. I feel like this is, thank God or the universe or whoever that I'm speaking with you right now, because actually what you're teaching me right now, I'll try to use on Tony and try to help him like this because, I feel like it really is the mind that does it.
Yeah, and if Tony reads, you might consider giving him a copy of my book.
I will.
Yeah, we carry books in our car all the time, and we're just always giving them to homeless people.
Really?
The ones that seem sane enough and halfway interested in the subject, and that are actually coherent. Because some of them aren't coherent. Or are illiterate or whatever. But yeah, I mean, routinely.
Now, is it available electronically? Because like I said, Tony has a smartphone. He can download it on
like Kindle and whatnot. Yeah.
Is it available?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. And if you don't have a Kindle reader, the Kindle program is free. I have it on my computer. and it could be available for the phones and whatnot also.
Right. I love Kindle. Kindle's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's go back into this book here. We covered, you said the first chapter, Desire, right? And the second chapter is interesting, though. Just flipping through it on belief. So you want to believe, you got to believe in, what's the significance of belief again? Did we touch on that?
Sure. Let's start with the quote. There's a book that's called The Magic of Believing, first published in 1948, and this is by Claude M. Bristol. Bristol, and let's listen to this. This quote is really it's one of my favorite quotes, especially certainly about belief, and that's why I opened the chapter with it. And here we go. Belief changes the tempo of the mind or thought frequency. Like a huge magnet, it draws the subconscious forces into play, changing your whole aura and affecting everything about you, including people and objects at great distances, end quote. That's the power of belief, and we can talk about it a little. But
talk to me about belief.
Right. Now, a psychologist or psychiatrist will tell you your beliefs, your subconscious beliefs, they drive your actions. You will always act consistent with your deep-seated beliefs of how things are and how you are and how worthy you are in all of this. But what I want the metaphysical student and the person who can go even beyond that to know is that belief not only drives your behavior, it drives through you, it drives the behavior of other people, and it drives events and circumstances as a whole, and that can be anywhere on the planet. There is no, it doesn't get weaker with distance. In quantum physics, we learned that reality is basically non-local. And that's really abstract, but it basically means that there's no separation between anything. There's in the final analysis, there is no distance, there is no time in dimensions above this one, and every point of creation is actually in touch with every other point in creation and throughout existence. And
Mr. Goi, do you believe in aliens?
That's a huge subject. I could say I believe in them. I could say I don't believe in them. But when you start getting into the quantum physics angle of things, you understand that people, and we're getting a little deeper than the average person might be comfortable going, but that individually and collectively, we can actually create things. And it's like what we look for, we find. And so it's not actually an easy question to answer. I mean, obviously the artifacts are there, the technology from the pyramids. They've found batteries that are thousands of years old,
Absolutely, yeah. I believe I watched that Ancient Aliens, Ancient Alien Theory. I just find to be very interesting.
Right, but when you start getting into quantum physics and you start to understand, and I'm not an expert on the subject, but I've done some reading, that in quantum physics, what they've learned is that the observer and the observed are not separate, and that the scientist in his laboratory cannot observe a experiment without fundamentally changing the outcome of the experiment by the mere process of observation. And the theory basically is that what we see is not really there. It doesn't exist in the solid form we think it does. It exists in a state of waveforms. And that when a conscious observer chooses to look in a certain direction, those waveforms collapse basically into what we perceive as solid reality. And so the truth of the matter is, and then look at another concept. People say, well, do you believe in past lives? And I say, it's not that easy of a question. When you really understand the nature of reality, you realize that there is no time. You realize that the Civil War is going on right now, as is something happening 1,000 years from now. Time is just an illusion. In our very pinched off human consciousness, we can only perceive reality for the most part in a linear fashion, and therefore we're going through a process, but the process is not the reality. It's an observation of it or a depiction of it as we can assess. And, it's a well-known fact that an accident can happen on the corner, and you ask 5 people what happened, and 5 people are going to have slightly different stories.
Mm-hmm.
So those types of questions are really easy to answer. I'd never say, no, I don't believe in aliens or past lives. The evidence for them is just so overwhelming. But on the other hand, I can't say that I believe like everyone else believes about aliens and past lives, because I'm looking deeper at another level of causation, which can account for these things, if not actually being there, but having evolved into what they are. See, the aliens are not separate from the observers of the aliens. Therefore,
yeah. And I know one thing, when you're on a crowded train, you get the sense that somebody's looking at you. You could always tell if somebody's observing you. Like I think they did some kind of study I heard or something like about that, where somebody observed somebody else, and then they could always the person who was being observed could always tell when they were being observed.
Right. You can feel the energy.
We're really connected. The human race is really just one organism. I feel like we're all just one human race, and
that's exactly right. Years ago, I saw for the first time somebody showed me. I don't know where I saw it or heard it, but you take a piece of paper and you cut 5 holes in it, and then you put your 5 fingers through it, and you wiggle them around, and it looks like 5 separate things. But when you turn the paper upside down, you see that it's all connected. And yes, that's why the what we put in our subconscious mind regarding money, regarding belief, is what tends to come about is because we're not separate from the other people out there.
Right, we're affecting. It's almost like we're that little negative piece of the whole unit, right? And all the other units, they don't like that negativity, so they get away from it, kind of maybe, and other negative things happen to that particular area. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. If you want to look at it like this, we are all connected. We are all one. There's only one mind. Even when I talk about, or metaphysicians, teachers talk about the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, the superconscious mind, the universal mind, we have to talk like that so that we can understand certain mechanisms of how they work. But really, it's all one mind. And here's the thing. We are different from all of creation as individuals only in degree, not in kind. In other words, we, in a very fundamental sense, at the core of our being, we are God. We are the universe. We are God personalized. We are God experiencing Himself. We are the universe manifesting into action and into material reality. And here's the thing. Potentially, any one of us has access to all of the power of the entire universe because it is us. And people do, when they lift a car, that somebody's trapped under a car, or they just do something with their mind and create some huge thing that happens seemingly magically. They've tapped in.
The adrenaline hits you, and then you do something like kind of superhuman right there.
Superhuman. But when they take the people on like PCP or whatever, and they can do things that are far beyond their own strength, but guess what? Their bones break as they're doing it. In other words, they might lift a car, but both legs will break under the strain. Whereas there's been other things that happen, and I just use that as an example, and let's just talk, from more of a mental standpoint, that someone who comes from nothing and who has nothing going for them, has all the odds against them, was abused as a child, is poor, and they turn around and they end up at the top of the heap. I mean, one example that comes to mind, Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
So if that's not an example of spiritual fortitude and power and mind power, and she is very into this stuff.
Mr. Goi, that's the second time you've mentioned Oprah Winfrey. You really like Oprah Winfrey, don't you?
Actually, I don't remember. Mentioning.
No, you did. You mentioned her before.
Well, I'm going to say, for anybody who thinks that the deck is stacked against them, try living her life. Try being a little defenseless black poor girl in the South, being molested by family members and all of this, and then becoming one of the most influential women on the entire planet through sheer force of her personality, her will, her spiritual energy. People feel it, they relate to it. If she can do that, what can we do?
No, I know.
We can certainly do more than we're doing now. That's the point. Maybe we're not going to be rulers of the world, or the most influential person ever born, but we can certainly do more and we can give more than we're doing now.
Sorry for going off on a little tangent about Oprah Winfrey and stuff. The only reason why I brought that up is because you mentioned that she is kind of into this stuff, and she is into this. And the only reason why I know, because I really don't watch Oprah Winfrey whatsoever. But again, I mentioned my girlfriend Amy, who watches her new show, like the Super Soul Sunday thing, and she always like trying to make me watch it, but it has
Deepak
Chopra, and I really like Deepak Chopra. He's awesome. And really this whole point that you're making, it really goes right into that same Buddhist mantra, we're all human, nobody's better than anybody else, nobody's beneath anybody else, we're all going to die someday. It's like people take things so seriously. You got to realize you're going to die someday, okay? That's true. We only have a finite time on this planet. Everybody's the same. All you have to do is desire what you want. If you want to enjoy the time you're here and have and attract money into your life, so that you don't, it's not the love of money, it's that you just don't have to worry about things. You can just live your life and enjoy yourself and not have to worry where money is going to come from all the time. And we all deserve it, because we're all the same, and we're all one part of one organism. And the secret is, I feel the secret is, there is no secret. The secret is, go out and do it. Well, you can do whatever you want to do. If you really put forth the effort constantly, and you never ever give up, and you always have that in your brain all the time, then eventually it's going to happen. It's like you're just pounding at the wall, pounding at the door. Maybe somebody is at the door kind of holding it or whatever, not wanting to let you in. But eventually they're going to get tired, and you're going to get your foot jammed in there a little bit. You're going to take a crowbar and you're going to pop that door straight open. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah.
That's my take on it. It's a little.
People become multimillionaires and billionaires without knowing absolutely anything about mind power or metaphysics. But you can look at them and listen to them, and they're doing it all. They have the self-confidence, they have the belief, they're learning their field, they're doing what they love. So everything that's in my book, they're already doing, even though they don't realize it. But here's the thing. Generally speaking, it's harder over time, because they're working against the grain, because they are trying to build their castle in this dimension. And it can be done through sheer force of will and hard work and taking all your knocks over long years of time. But there's an easier way, and that is understanding how your mind is creating what you're doing, and that you actually don't have to work as hard as you're working, and that the universe can actually do more, and that your money doesn't have to come to you from places that you deem like, okay, I'll do this and I'll be able to get money from there, and then I'll go work over there part-time and I can make another $800, $700 a month or whatever. And if you want an example, I'll give you a great example from my own life. And there is a video on YouTube about this, and people who, follow my radio shows, you've heard this story before, because it's just such a great one. Many years ago, I was at the time working a very low-paying job as a caregiver for an elderly disabled man. And, I loved the guy. He was wonderful. And but the job itself was a dirty, low-paying, job. I wouldn't have been going there if it wasn't for being paid. And I wasn't making enough money to support the household. And we were using our cards to make up the difference, and had gotten eventually into $10,000 credit card debt. And we're going in deeper each month, trying to jockey those cards around to not get the highest, to get the lowest rates possible and all that. But we were now borrowing from the cards to pay the cards. So not just to make up for the difference of what we needed to survive, but now paying the cards with the cards. It was started to spiral at an accelerated rate. And I knew metaphysics. I've been studying this stuff for decades. And I finally thought, this is unacceptable. I need to get out of this. And I need to focus my mind power and do this. And what I came up with was just one technique. And I thought to myself, if any of the techniques work, then any of them work. And I can pick one. And I picked the Technique of Affirmation, which is another chapter in the book. And I came up with this affirmation that, understand, when we there's a science to it. You word an affirmation as if it's in the present tense. You don't word where the money comes from, as if it's already happened and all of this. And I came up with this affirmation: all of my credit cards are completely paid off. That was it. It had the end results. It was as short and as sweet as possible. It had no extra fluff. It was a very clear desire. All of my credit cards are completely paid off. It was an affirmation. I wrote it down. And I would do that like before I even got out of bed in the morning. All of my credit cards are completely paid off. All of my credit cards are completely paid off. I would do it at night. I would do it riding my bike to work, and I would and back, and I would do it, not the whole way, but as I thought of it. And
you would just think it. You would think it. Maybe say it to yourself.
Yes, I would say it out loud when I could, like when I was riding my bike and I was going by the schoolyard, for instance, and not by people's houses. I'd be pumping away. All my credit cards are completely paid off. Now, when I first started using, obviously I believed that this could work or I wouldn't take the time to do it. But it was like, oh, God, how could this possibly happen? I make so little money and I have no prospects for making more money. And it's getting worse really fast. It's actually time sensitive. But after the first day or two of doing the affirmation, I really started to getting it embedded in my subconscious mind. And within just a few days, I absolutely knew I was stating an actual fact. It wasn't like believing. It was like any flickers of doubt that were there were gone. And I just kept doing it. And I resolved myself that I'm not going to stop until this is done.
If you say a lie enough, it becomes true, right?
Well, it's, when you understand how consciousness works, it's actually true already, because everything that we see here comes from the dimension of consciousness and energy. So when we create a thing there, it's actually real, whether or not it's appeared here yet. And so I believed, and I kept up my faith and my motivation, and I don't want people to think I just did this thousands and thousands and thousands of times a day and became some kind of a nutcase. It was just a theme. It was the main thing. I stopped doing my other affirmations. It was the main focus on my mind. Even if I wasn't doing the affirmation, I had the clear image. I couldn't get it out of my mind of all my credit cards being paid off. I did this day after day, week after week. And
how long did it take for it to be paid off? And did you pay it off yourself, or did you just get like a gift or something? Or
right, you hit the nail on the head. And of course, I didn't know I'd be writing about this and talking about it and doing, speaking about it. So I don't know exactly how long it took, but it took between roughly 4 to 6 weeks. And here's what happened. 4 to 6 weeks after I started the affirmation, someone came back into my life who I didn't really know that well. I hadn't seen this person for years, and I really didn't know this person very well. I knew them through another person. They were a family member of someone else I knew. And so this person and their life started getting really upheaval for major changes about the time I started doing my affirmations. Now, it turned out that this person probably, without going into their personal details, probably their life was saved by the changes that transpired in their life. Their whole life had to completely just be changed and torn apart from what it was and had been for decades to something new. So that 4 to 6 weeks later, after I started my affirmation, this person was in my living room from more than 150 miles away where they lived. Like I said, I hadn't seen them for years. And they had just come into a huge pile of money, like way more than $10,000. And when I started talking about the debt that the household was in, this person's like, well, that's nothing. That's no problem. They pulled out their checkbook and literally wrote a check for $10,000 on the nose, as a gift, as a free gift, not as a loan. And it wasn't that much of a pinch in their purse because they had, like I say, many, many times more than that. And they had not had control of basically any of their own money, or what you would think should have been their own money, for decades. And so then I took that check, I deposited it, and then every time for the next month that a bill came in, whether it was $2,000 or $3,500, or 500, whatever was on a particular card, I just wrote the check and paid it in full. So within 4 to 6 weeks, I had the check in my hand. A month later, all of my credit cards were completely paid off. And I could, at that point, stop using that affirmation and move on to other things. That's the power of just one technique. Now, when you really look at it, other techniques come into play. You can't speak without having images, so you're by default visualizing. There was the belief there, the strong belief that this was going to work. I felt it, and that went into the expectancy, and I actually felt like it had already happened. I mean, if you look at the different chapters in my book, the money mindset was completely positive. It hadn't been negative and fearful and, oh, God, what am I going to do? It's like, wow, I feel so great. My credit cards are paid off. So if you look through the book here, even though I only focused on one technique, I was doing so many others by default. And that's why I think the way I teach this is so wonderful for the average person, because you don't have to know it all or try to do it all. But you got to do something, and you got to do it right and with your whole heart, and this stuff will work for you.
Wow. I mean, I feel like I owe you money right now. How long have we been talking right now? This is a nice little class that you're giving me, and I'm definitely going to use the affirmation technique. Most definitely. I mean, I would love to have. Right now, I kind of use somebody else's facilities in order to do my T-shirts, and because I screen print T-shirts, and I do the designs and everything like that. But I would love to have my own facilities where it's all just my own, and I can do it at any time of night or any point in the day. Whenever I feel like cranking some out, I can. That would be awesome. But it costs like $11,000 to purchase everything you would need. But so what should I do in order to attract $11,000 into my life? Because that's exactly what I need. Just $11,000. That's all I need. $11,000.
$11,000. So there's this technique that I love. I forget where I picked it up first because I've heard it from different teachers. And I actually have a notebook where I do nothing but write these statements. And this is a great thing to do. You could start out, just get a 3x5 card or a little notebook or whatever, and write out a statement to yourself. And this is different than it is an affirmation, actually. But you can write down something very simple like, I am so happy and grateful now that I have attracted the $11,000 I wanted, or now that I have attracted $11,000 into my life. That would be a good start.
Okay, hold on one second. I am so happy and grateful that I have now attracted $11,000 into my life. Right? That's good?
Certainly. And of course, just by thinking about it, you could have as easily said, I'm so happy and grateful now that I have $11,000 in the bank. You see, you can word it different ways, but that's a good one. You may come up with one you like a little better as you look at that later on. And then you want to be really open. And you want to think about the kinds of things I teach in my book. For instance, the chapter on think and feel as if. Now, if you bought, let's say you bought a lottery scratch off, right? And you won $10,000. You would absolutely know that you won the money, even though the money's not in your hand yet. You would say, wow, this is great. You would think a certain way. You would begin to feel a certain way. And we can move on to other chapters. You would begin to speak as if. And you would begin to act as if. In other words, if you had $10,000 coming that you weren't expecting because you won a scratch off, you'd be like looking online because you need a new computer, or you'd be looking for another car, a used car because you're riding the bus or whatever, acting as if. That's the kind of thing you want to do before you win the scratch off. In other words, consider yourself, by having written that down, as having won or accessed or attracted that money. Don't look at it as in the future. You just created $11,000 in the most important place it can be created, and that's in your mind. So now start to think and especially feel as if you already have it. How are you going to think? Not, oh, I wish I had it and it's going to be so hard and where am I going to come up with $11,000? But boy, this is really great. There's another affirmation. I'm so happy now that I have my own shop, or however you would want to word it. My own silk screen or whatever it is, shop. These affirmations work. They're just one small technique, but when people ask me what's my favorite mind power technique, I say it's affirmation, and that is because it is so simple. It has such far-reaching effects, but it's easy to apply. Anyone can do it, and it works.
So that would be like step one. Step one would be create an affirmation and then say it to yourself, right? Whenever you can.
Right. Well, step one, of course, was the desire. You had
the desire. Right. Oh, I'm sorry.
And you actually came up with the actual figure, which is a big stumbling block. People say, I want more money, but they can't tell you how much, and they won't. Because when you commit, you put something out into the universe. And another thing, here's
so I really am doing all this stuff unbeknownst to myself, right?
Sure. You're working in you attracted, you can look at it as me, into your life to do this podcast. So maybe you can have a couple pieces of the missing puzzle filled in, or remind you of some things that your girlfriend's already told you that you haven't quite implemented or whatever.
Right.
But it's all working toward your good. I mean, and that $10,000 story that I gave you is not even the most impressive. These principles work. I was $50,000 in credit card debt at another time, years after that episode. And people say, well, you knew this stuff. How could you get into that much debt if you already know about metaphysics and mind power? How? Because like anyone else, I'm human.
James, can I get you off the... I just wanted to talk about this really quick, and then we can get right back into this. I'm sorry. But how did you get into like metaphysics and stuff like that in the first place?
Well, when I first came to California more than 30 years ago, I guess, as a young man, I don't even remember where my first book came from or what it was for sure, but I started finding these like metaphysical books.
What exactly is metaphysics?
Well, metaphysics, if you like look up definitions or whatever, sometimes it's like a theoretical philosophy of being or knowing, or people think of it as meta, meaning beyond, like beyond physics. It is beyond physics. It's beyond like Newtonian physics. It's a metaphysics. It's a way things work, but it's in another realm.
It's not like what Einstein was into, right? He was actually into physics.
Well, Einstein was into physics, but it also bordered on, E equals mc squared, which was, basically a mathematical equation for the fact that energy can actually be transformed into, materiality and vice versa. In other words, and he was looking at things like the nature of time. And the speed of light, and what's the relationship of time past that. So he was further along than just inertia and momentum, and the speed of sound and these types of things. But there are. I've read a little bit about him, because later in his career is when metaphysics started come to the fore. Einstein was actually apparently a little perturbed by quantum physics. And he reportedly just in a little outburst one day said, I just can't believe that God would, play dice with the universe, which is basically what quantum physics, proposes or points to in a certain sense. So, but metaphysics is basically...
Right, that's all like by chance and things like that, right?
Right. So think of metaphysics basically for our purposes as just being a physics of the mind and energy. It's a way of thinking and being that the individual can use through specific metaphysical techniques, such as affirmation, visualization, acting as if, that will cause things to happen in your own actions and in the actions of others and in the universe at large. But what I want to point out here is a wonderful thing is that when you have a good heart, and when you truly want only good for all people, and you use these principles and techniques that I'm teaching for positive outcomes, things will work out in wonderful ways. Like, who could have ever imagined, oh, I'm going to create an affirmation that somebody's going to come from hundreds of miles away that I barely know and write me a check.
Oh, no, you know what, Mr. Goi? I want to be that guy. I want to be the person who writes the check to my friend and helps that person on their way to attracting money. That's what I want. I want to be that guy. I want to be able to pick up the check from all my friends at the restaurant and not worry about it, you know?
Exactly. And to do that, you need to first be the guy that attracts the money to be able to do it.
Right.
But what I wanted to say is when you use these principles and techniques, see, mind power can be very dangerous in the wrong hands and used in the wrong way for the wrong purposes. It borders on black magic, or basically can be stated as black magic. But when you use it properly and in tune and in line with universal law as it functions, the mechanism of creation, then we have a thing that comes into play called divine order. And inherent within the process or the mechanism of divine order is divine timing. And I tell people that you will be so amazed over and over, year after year, how the universe not only works out things and makes people, like I said, the best thing that ever happened to that person that wrote me that check was that their life changed so drastically that they had to leave it and couldn't go back. It's the best thing that ever happened to them. So when you work with mind power, when you come up with the end results you want and you don't program in the ways and means that it has to happen, you don't limit it, you will find that the universe works everything out seamlessly, synchronistically, and that no other person is ever unduly harmed or suffers any undue loss. In other words, it works out in perfect harmony. And that's why I tell people, you can attract $10,000 in 4 to 6 weeks. You can attract it in one day, or it could take you 6 months, which still would be acceptable. But the point is, never be in a hurry. First of all, being in a hurry is a reaching out and being, tense and
that's a negative. Yeah, it's a negative vibe that you're giving out.
When you understand divine timing, you know that your good will absolutely come to you in a divine way and at the perfectly right time. And it's just such a peaceful way to live.
Just like that boomerang thing I was telling you about in the beginning, right?
Exactly. And the boomerang that you toss out or that you throw out is you have to decide what it is that you want when we talk about creating. When we talk about just what you get from the universe, it's your actions and thoughts and inner aspirations and designs on people and, your basic state, whether it's malevolent or benevolent and all of this. But yes, we can create what it is we want. We can have complete faith that this or something better. That's another great statement. When I do an affirmation or visualize or do some kind of a technique to remember, and that is this or something better for the highest best good of all concerned. And that is really like a safety net that you don't create something that's bad or in the bad way. See, I might think, I really want to get that job over at the radio station, and I focus on that, and I'm attached to the time and all. But guess what? There might be another station that I never even thought would be interested in giving me my own show. That if I would have had that show, might not have come around. So we just know absolutely that we can attract all good into our lives that will help us grow and to help us give more and more and to express and do what we're here to do. But that this or something better, thy will, not my will. So when we look at that, people say, well, you're willing, you're telling the universe what you want, right? But I believe, and I think in practice, people will learn and intuit that when the things we desire is actually the universe, or the good things, the positive things that don't hurt anyone and to help us express and give more, is the universe thinking and desiring through us. In other words, God, the universe, wants us to get into our music because we're born to do it and it will bless so many lives. It wants us to get into our charity work or our artwork or whatever, because that's where we can give the gift that no one else can give in quite the way that we can. So thy will, not my will, doesn't mean that we just don't have desires and we just let, whatever happens, happens. It's that we try to think and allow the universe and God to think, or however people look at it. When I say God or the universe, I'm just trying to include everyone, because some people look at it, the big it, as God. Some people look at it as the universe. It doesn't matter what you look at it as. It functions the same way. And so when we look at it like that, and we really open to that energy coming in and not only smoothing out and governing our experience and our circumstances, but guiding us, not only in desire, but in the actual tasks that we'll have to do to bring those about. It's a process that it really does defy adequate description in words. And when you start to experience it, your heart is filled with so much joy and knowledge and belief and certainty that no one could ever take it away from you. And that's when you truly become a mind power practitioner at a high level. At that point, you are definitely thinking positively at least 50% or more of the time than you're thinking negatively. And I assess myself at 95% or higher. Earlier, I talked about the positive money mindset horse, and then there's the negative money mindset ground. And so you think positive and then you get knocked off your horse. Most people that are really negative and don't have the finances they want, they're on the negative money mindset ground for 95% or more of the time, let's say. But the positive, money mindset people, they're on the horse, 50% or more, hopefully 90% or more, and they get knocked off, yes, and they hear some negativity, or, they're at work and everyone's talking about the economy and it drags them down, but then they get right back up because you become so intimately aware of hey, I am thinking right now, I am having thoughts, I am having feelings, I am having resultant images. Is this what I want to create? And you can't think negatively. Once you get far enough into this, you can't think negatively without noticing it fairly quickly. And then you just say, not acceptable. I'm creating with my mind. I know I can have what I want. And then you start thinking about, speaking about, and feeling as if those types of things are what's your reality, what's coming down the pike, and what's already here.
Mr. Goi, have you attracted money into your life? Are you talking the talk, walking the walk?
I certainly like to think I am. I'll give you that other example I talked about. And oddly enough, I had been working, and people say, well, how does that happen? Well, like I said, I get lazy. I have a lot of other things to do. I was involved in legal matters, but it came to pass, even after working on this particular book, How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, for years on end, on and off, because a lot of things kept taking me away from the writing and the research. I found my household, myself and my household, $50,000 in credit card debt. And at that time, I again had a very low paying job, again as a caregiver for an elderly man. As a matter of fact, it was the same man. I had left town, had lived in some other states. I had come back to California, and this fellow was still around. They rehired me. And I decided to do the most crazy thing. Anybody I told later or then, except for those closest to me who know the power that I can wield, because it's not, it's the power of the universe that I can access. And a $50,000 in debt, spiraling out so fast, spiraling down, it was just unbelievable, because huge amounts of going to pay the cards each month and all of this. And what I did was I actually quit the only visible means of support that the household had. I quit my job. And I started working night and actually it's a big long story.
So wait a second, you were $50,000 in debt and you quit your job?
$50,000. And going in deeper each month. Thank God we had the credit cards, but they weren't going to put up with that much more.
Was it because you just didn't whatever you were doing, you weren't finding fulfillment in what you were doing?
It was because I was earning less than it took to live. And I tell people, they say, "Oh, I don't need a lot of money." Wake up, people. Even to live a mediocre life in a little apartment. I mean, I don't know about other places around the country. It could cost you $1,000 to have one small bedroom around here or more, depending on how nice of an area you want. I don't care how frugally you want to live. If you want to live in society, it's expensive. So the bottom line is I was making less than it cost to live, and it was over an extended period of time. And it came to pass, $50,000 in credit card debt. So I had like a spiritual epiphany, or whatever I can term it as, one night. And I'll give you just to show the enormity of the decision in my own life. First of all, I had never left a job without notice before. That just wasn't me. And I immediately, when I made this decision, I knew I needed a period of silence. I just knew this intuitively. If I talked, I'm going to lose what I've got my hands on here. And so I went into silence. And so I couldn't even call work and say I can't come in anymore. And I couldn't have done the job. I couldn't have given notice and done the job without talking. I just knew if I start talking, then maybe I'll do this some other time, but it ain't going to happen now. This was a turning point in my life. I was ready to rise up from the ashes that I was creating, or to just end up on the street. And so somebody had to call work and quit for me. And I went into silence. That lasted 10 days. I stopped shaving and cutting my hair. Now, I'm not telling anyone else, please don't quit your job. You don't have to go into silence. You don't have to fast like I did. You don't have to stop shaving and cutting your hair and all this. I'm telling you my experience, because this was a pivotal point in my life. And what did I do? Now that I had all this free time in and I wasn't even on the internet at the time. I had never used a computer still. I only got a computer because I had to, because I was going to be an author and I had to tell people about my book eventually. But what I did was I worked on the book. I studied, I hunted up the quotes, I started writing and rewriting and editing the chapters. Number one, like all day and night, I was in this little attic room. It only had a window on one end, and another place where there could have been a window was an air conditioner, thank God, because it could be like an oven up there. So I was in this darkened attic room with no television up there, with no computer, didn't even know how to use one, just with me and my papers and my books. And I was studying, and I was writing, and I was theorizing, and I was condensing my thoughts and getting clear and making distinctions in my mind. And I was doing everything I was writing about. I was doing affirmations and visualization and all of these things. I was doing everything now. Now, 50,000, it's like, okay, 10,000, I got away with one thing. Now I was immersed in it 24 hours a day.
And you were going more into debt, correct? I mean, you were living on something.
Certainly, right. And within a 2 to 3, within a 2 to 3 month period. So it's a little fuzzy about the exact figures. If I knew I was going to tell the story later, I would keep better records. But some of the money that we had was in the bank, so technically it wasn't like we were in the debt, but we weren't. We still had the money. We hadn't spent all of it yet, or whatever. And I imagine that since it took 2 to 3 months to get to where things turned around, that we may have gone in a little more, or we may have been a little less when I first quit my job, whatever. But it's right in there. Because we would take out large sums, like, I wasn't using the card for food at the food store and the gas station and all that, because then you're paying top interest. I was getting cash advances, and that's where they give you the lowest interest in the beginning. But so anyway, this time it took 2 to 3 months, and within a 2 to 3 month period, I don't know the exact figures again. I didn't know I'd be telling the story. We attracted into the household through matters I can only speak, a little bit about, because they're legal matters. They involve other people. People who know me are going to know what and who I'm talking about, and so I can only say so much. But
just be general. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the general gist of it is that we attracted into the household 2 six-figure windfalls within a 2 to 3 month period. So I don't know if the first one came like a month after I quit my job or whatever. Possibly I could restructure those circumstances if I have paperwork or whatever. But within 2 to 3 month period, we attracted 2 six-figure windfalls, and they weren't both like $100,000. They're both like way more than 100. So they're 2 six-figure windfalls. And this is another thing I tell people. My greatest mind power manifestations of attracting money, it doesn't have to be this way, people. You don't have to be stupid like me and wait until things are just so out of hand that you're ready to end up on the street. I don't advocate that. But for me, sometimes I don't learn as quick or whatever. other things, other people take my time and energy, things happen. But for me, certainly the 2 6 figures is one of the greatest things that's happened to me. But it also happened on the heels of one of my greatest challenges. In other words, I rose up from, the first time it took, a long period of months or whatever to get into $10,000 in credit card debt. I rose up out of it in just a 4 to 6 week period. Maybe a couple of months with the paying off the cards and everything, actually being out of debt. This time, 2 to 3 months. But it was one of my greatest manifestations, but it came on the heels of one of my greatest disappointments, or one of my lowest times, one of my most desperate financial times that I've ever been in my life. I've never been in more debt than that, in more credit card than that. And so from one of my worst times, and my back is up against the wall, like there was like no way out that could be discerned by my human intellect, to having one of the greatest manifestations. And just briefly, I can say it was without being too specific, it was legal matters that had been languishing in the legal system literally for years on end. The other side was extremely obstinate, and we had been told by experts, by lawyers, that there was a chance that this was going to actually fall out of the system at some point if it wasn't resolved. And we would have put in all that time and energy basically for nothing. And expense. The lawyers weren't working for free. The main one did. There was one we had to pay some money, but the other one waited until the new lawyer waited until the issue was resolved to be paid, thank God. But what happened about the time I quit my job and started getting into my mind power thing, and again, I was in silence for the first 10 days. That was certainly the most powerful 10 days of my life that really turned the whole thing around. It's not part of what I teach even. It's not in the book, but maybe it's something I'll write about in another book.
You went into like a major meditative state, kind of, for like 10 days?
It's just an active mental process. I don't know, I'd call it meditation. It's kind of a moving active meditation where you're in a certain state. It's almost like being in the zone in sports, where you just can't miss and you just know you're on and you're doing the right thing. But I just kept that state. And about the time I quit my job and entered into this, the other side of the legal, board, game board, who had been so obstinate and just not even cooperating with the tiniest request or anything else like that for years on end, suddenly did a complete 100% about face. They started being more open to conversation, not directly, but through lawyers. They started being more open to negotiations. They started being more open to the fact that they're not going to walk away with everything. They got to let some of it go because there was a lot of money involved in it. And they completely changed in a way that anybody who knows the person or persons in question would say that's not this person. They don't just automatically, after years and years of being entrenched in this obstinance, turn around and say, oh, okay, I'll sign some papers. I'll allow hundreds of thousands of dollars to be taken from me, as they would see it, or taken out of my control and out of my name. It was a pure, absolute miracle. And there's been others. There was another one that involved over $100,000. And I can't talk.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. That's
but
great.
I'm just saying it happens it's just so powerful. But you have to, I tell people, if you don't take anything else from this show, take this with you, is that mind power is not a hobby. It's not something you do some of the time. The way I teach it, and the way I teach it for being very financially successful. And by the way, that episode where I quit that last job, I have never worked again. And that was back probably 2006 maybe, or somewhere in there.
I got to share something with you. So I have done this very recently. And it's not, I didn't quit my job. See, I do my podcast. I have a background in radio, right? I did it where I was from in Tampa, Florida, but now I live in New York City. And I'm doing my podcast on the internet radio for WGRN Internet Radio out in LA, and also for iTunes and whatnot. But I also make T-shirts, and I've been doing that for like 3 years now. Um, before that, I had an insurance agency, and I was somewhat successful actually for like 3 years. We made very good money. Me and my cousin, we did Medicare Advantage plans, and had our own business, and we had like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 people working for us at one given time. My father included, my brother, all worked for us. And then the economy kind of collapsed. They changed all the regulations for the particular insurance that we were selling. And so I had to do something else. And I actually discussed, I have an Indian friend. His name's Dinesh. He was the reason why I got through college in the first place. I ended up rooming with this gentleman, and we wouldn't have any TV on in the house at all. Got rid of all the TVs. All we did was study all the time, and I got in the mode, and that's how I got through college. But anyway, I had talked to this gentleman on the phone, and I was telling him how, changing the economy, changing regulations of Medicare. I'm not gonna be able to make the same kind of income that I was before. What should I do? And he was just like, Rob, you know what? Think about exactly what it is that you want to do in life. What is it that's going to make you happy? Any boundaries, throw them away. It was this very, very like coach kind of, he's always been kind of a coach, actually. He's kind of like a mentor guy, coach guy, like you are. And he just does it naturally, just with whoever he's around. And I love him for that. But he told me, to put my mind in order. And I came up with this idea of making T-shirts all the time, right? Because I just love coming up with designs. I love being creative. I love the fact that I can print something, get it out of my system, and just create on the fly. It's very rewarding to be able to create things and make it from scratch. And I've been doing that for the last 3 years. But now I've reached a point where I've always had to work also, though. You have while you're building your business or whatever, you might need other income. So you work a day job or something, and then you do what you really want on the side or at night or on your days off or whatever. And I recently went part-time at my day job, even though I'm not making the kind of income that I really, should be making with the T-shirts right now to be able to afford to do so. But I still I had to do it because every day that I go to that day job, I feel like I die a little bit each day because it's not very rewarding creatively whatsoever. And I get nothing out of it, I feel like. I mean, I guess there is some positive reasons to be there, and I should be counting my blessings to be there. I've gotten some good out of it, but it's just not what I want to do in life. So anyway, I started going part-time. So I feel like I kind of connect with you on this a little bit. How you just stopped, you just quit cold turkey. I can't do that though. I mean, well, I guess I could. I guess, I don't know. From what you're saying, I guess you're not advocating just going out and quitting your job, but I'm doing that same kind of thing. I still feel like, I'm just trying to ease out of it though.
Right. The reason I have done it, and this is a case where I'm saying, I'm not telling people to do what I've done. I'm just saying I did it and it worked out for me. But you know what? If someone else did that and they didn't have the firmness of belief, and again, I had already been studying metaphysics for decades. I mean, this stuff was in my blood, even though I didn't use it all the time. I mean, I'd use it for parking spaces. And I'd get parking spaces like magic, but here I am, I can't pay my rent. So I used it sporadically and not most intelligently. But it was already in my blood. And so certainly you could do that. I can connect with you on another level. In my early years, I did silkscreen.
Oh, you did?
I actually became a silkscreen manager of a shop. And I had a couple of pet shirts that every logo we did or whatever, I put one on that shirt. So I had a couple of shirts that were kind of heavy with ink, and that was fun. But there's a saying, I'm not sure if it's attributed to Emerson or to William James, and it goes along these lines: do the thing and you'll have the power. And you can do that at various levels. In other words, you can go from full-time to part-time, and you start to do the thing you want to do, the thing you love or whatever, and you'll start having more power. Possibly if you quit your job altogether and started doing the thing even more, you'd have even more power. In other words, your $50,000 in credit card debt, and you attract enough money that will then carry you, for years down the road.
I mean, that would be the awesomest thing that could ever happen. I'm definitely going to start doing this affirmation. I love the fact that we got to speak today. This was really, really, eye-opening and stuff, and it put me right back in that mode that I need to be in, I feel like, And I think that everybody should go out and get a copy of this book, How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. Definitely.
Right. How to attract money using mind power. And I also tell people to sign up for my free monthly e-zine at my website, jamesgoijr.com, or just go to attractmoney.org, gets you to the same place. And every month I talk about these principles, and I help to keep you motivated and inspired and with good, solid information you can use. Because, anyone listening, who's still with us, anyone who's listened to this, unless
there are people listening to this podcast right now, absolutely enamored in the conversation.
And unless they're dead between the ears, they are inspired, they're uplifted, they feel more possibilities than they've maybe felt before. They feel more positive about their own prospects. But guess what? If that's it, if they walk away, if they start watching the news again and getting all their how to think and feel from family, friends, coworkers, and the media, guess what? That world will pull them right back down into the economy's bad.
Oh God, yeah. You got to get rid of the TV. You got to stop watching the mainstream news. You got to stop watching all that mainstream stuff. It's just it's poison in your brain. It poisons everything.
There's been times in my life where I've had no TV at all. Actually, physically got rid of the unit. But I again recently, I started finding myself using it a little, and then But one thing that really helped me is I have my calculator in front of me. And I'm going to say, let's say somebody says, well, I just watch a half hour of TV. Let's say I watch an hour of TV a day. The average person, I think, is more like 2, 3, or 4 hours. But let's say 1 hour a day times 365 days a year is 365 hours divided by 40 is 9. It's more than 9 weeks, people. It's 2 months and a week. Now, how much could you accomplish if you sat down in an office or in your art studio or your music recording room or whatever, and went and worked on a project or projects you love, or worked on writing a book or whatever? And how much could you accomplish if you cloistered yourself in and worked just on that passion for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 2 months and a day, almost like a third of the year? That's just 1 hour of TV a day. What could you do 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 9 weeks? What could you accomplish?
I like that a lot. That's true.
Yeah. And so by giving up 1/2 hour of television and by using it for something else positive and noteworthy, and that could actually have ramifications for the rest of your life, 9 entire weeks. Most people who have regular jobs, they're working for someone else's dream. They're doing someone they care, and all they're doing is earning a paycheck. But if you could actually take a half hour of TV and get rid of it and have 9 full work weeks a year to devote to something that's going to help you grow financially and in other creative and expressive ways, it's just mind-boggling when you get your calculator out.
I never thought of it that way. I never thought to calculate the time that you spend doing the thing. What was it that he said? The thing.
Oh, do the thing and you'll have the power?
Yeah. I never thought of taking the calculator out and calculating how long I do the thing a day. Right. But if you do that, you see that it just like a half an hour a day calculated to a year is a substantial amount of time throughout that year that you could be devoting to what it is you really want to do in your life, right?
Right. And then now take the calculator out and say, what if I worked on my dream? Let's say you're an author, you're writing a big, huge novel. What if I worked on my dream 4 hours a day, whether it's 5 days a week, 6 or 7, it's up to you. But what if I worked on my dream 4 hours a day? Get your calculator out. 4 hours times 365. Look at that figure and say to yourself, how much work can I accomplish in that many months? And it's going to be many months of full day working days. Just by working 4 hours a day. And it's phenomenal. We only accomplish a small part of what we can, and A large part of it is we only use our minds to a tiny degree of what we're capable of. And another part is that we spend our time productively only to a very small degree compared to what we could be doing.
Yeah, and productively, I feel like productively is really like what you want to do. That's the most productive thing for a person, right?
Whether or not you're being paid for it at the moment. Look
Right.
at the most successful actors and writers and business people sometimes at the top of the heap. They're commanding, like, say, $20 million a picture, but guess how many years they waited tables and, cleaned up toilets as a janitor.
Absolutely. I know them. I know these people. They're my coworkers.
Right. So they did the thing that they loved doing, whether or not, in most cases not, they were even being paid for it. But guess what? The universe will catch up to you. It will pay you for every last hour you did what you would love, and it would pay you multiple times what you would have made if you would have done something. I mean, a top actor makes more in one picture in 6 weeks of work or 4 months of work or whatever it turns out to be than the average person makes in a lifetime, and they're doing what they love.
Because it's sweat equity. You're putting it in before, and it's going to come back around.
Exactly, if you never lose faith. Now, there are other actors. There's some actors who dropped off for years on end and then came back in a very big way, like John Travolta comes to mind. There are other actors, whether it's TV or music stars or whatever, that they have some success, they fall off, and they're never heard from again. What's the difference between them? It's the mindset. There are business people who have a major setback. They're never heard from again. There are people like Donald Trump, who is at the lowest low financially because of the turn in the economy and whatever happened, real estate market and all this, but who have such faith and belief and gumption and just keep moving forward and don't accept defeat. And they end up coming out better than ever, more famous than ever.
I'm going to throw a quote at you. I got a quote. All right, so Hemingway, right? Hemingway said, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it in front of me, but it's basically the world breaks us all, and some of us are stronger at the broken parts.
Right, and some of us never heal up, and we're permanently hobbled or incapacitated by that injury to ourselves, whereas others, how they say scar tissue is stronger than the skin, the normal skin that hasn't been scarred, because and the same thing in what you're saying. Some of us come back stronger because of the infliction of the reality that the world.
And I'll give you another one. And that's the persistence quote by Calvin Coolidge. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan "Press on" has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. I love that one.
Earlier persistence came up briefly in our conversation, and I thought of that quote from Calvin Coolidge, and I thought, I wish I, either knew it, it's a long one, or had it handy, because I would have loved to have read it. So
it's that's my favorite quote out of all the quotes I've ever read in my life. I love that quote. That sums it up, I think.
Right. Yeah. Persistence and determination. I mean, when you stop persisting, and look at the metaphysical side of it. When you stop and you give up, you have stopped believing that the thing you're trying to attain or were trying to attain is possible for you or is worth all of the effort. You've stopped believing. By the mere fact that you persist on is proof that you still believe you can accomplish it. So there's a very strong, not only practical sense that if you keep hammering away at the nail, it's going to eventually be fully seated, but by the metaphysical sense that you haven't lost your belief. You're still exercising your belief, and you still move forward.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap this up, because you know what? I have a great time talking to you. I really did, James. You're an awesome guy, man. I love you. I really do. You're my brother, man.
I really appreciate talking to you. This is a really good. I think people will be able to get some benefit out of this.
Absolutely. I can't. I really do genuinely. I have some people on here and stuff, and that you push their material, but I genuinely would love for everybody to buy How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, and even give it out to some people, because people can benefit from from reading this stuff and really practicing it in a genuine way, and just embody it, because God, it's like the best thing for you to be able to be, you can go to college for a million years, you can work the job and try to go up the corporate ladder all you want. But what it really comes down to is you don't have to work that hard. You can just do it intuitively if you start living the life like James Goi Jr. talks about.
Exactly. And it's not beyond you. Not only, obviously, if people are still listening, they believe that there's something to this. But I want them to know it's not only possible, but it's possible for you. It will work for you if you work with it.
Mr. Goi, people still listen. It's a podcast. People listen all the time on their commute. My commute in the city is insane. It will lapse an hour and 40 minutes, or however however long we've been talking to. That would be a 2-part. It takes me like an hour or so to get where I'm going, and then it takes me like an hour or so to come back. And that's what I do when I'm on the trains, in the in the subway, on the ferry, in a taxi, on a bus. I have my earphones on and I'm listening to a radio podcast. I love a radio podcast, and there's definitely people listening to this. Okay, this is very insightful information, and everything that you're saying here is worth its weight in gold.
Well, what I liked about wonderful interviews like this is that it's preserved now, and people can listen next week, next month, next year, and our words can continue to ring on out and to have an effect out there.
And James, you got to remember, you can do this too. You have you said it before. I remember I heard that, and I want to mention this. You're talking about the radio thing now. Is that a true aspiration for you? Would you like to be on the radio and do a radio show?
I have actually tried to have. I've actually started one show, a couple others fell through, but yes, I have looked into.
Listen, this equipment, I feel like everybody should do podcasts. I feel like everybody should get their the word out there. This internet thing that we have is so great. No, never before in our human beings' lifetime are we really truly connected than right now. We are truly connected, and it is quite inexpensive to go purchase yourself a mixer or a nice microphone, a nice computer and some recording equipment, and get this done. You could do it yourself, and I'm sure that's probably right on the horizon for yourself, because you have so much material, right?
Well, that's right, but there's one difference, is that like one of my shows that I did, there was a little bit of technical difficulty. A couple people tried to call in, and I was not aware of it, so I couldn't give the okay for them to get through. But I basically ended up carrying the show with no callers for 2 hours. In other words, I literally had to just talk for 2 hours. And when it's a whole different dynamic than a two-way conversation. So some of the opportunities I've looked into were on online stations where they had a built-in audience already. In other words, my show comes on at, let's say, 8 at night, and it's coming after another show. So there's already people listening to the station. And so there's like a built-in audience, because I have tried it. I did sort of pull it off. But a podcast being recorded in advance, I might give it some more thought. It might be possible, and something I want to test the waters with, maybe just a half hour or an hour, maybe not the full time.
Well, if you ever want any help with this or whatever, I can definitely reach out even to the people that put my show on. And anytime you wanna have, if you have some kind of message, a new message you come up with, or a new book, or anything at all you like to talk about, you can get in touch with me, and we can talk a little bit if you like, and we can get it out there.
Certainly.
I just want to put that in, open invitation out to you. So
right.
But we're gonna end this now, and I appreciate you coming on. Once again, buy James Goi Jr.'s new book, How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. Thank you so much for being on, okay?
Okay, thank you too. I've had a wonderful time. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
That's me.
Hey guys, thank you for listening. I really appreciate you tuning in to this insightful conversation between me, Bobby Pickles, and James Goi Jr. He is awesome, and you guys should all start thinking positively and try to attract that money into your lives. Because we all need money in our lives, so we don't have to worry about money. That's what it really comes down to. So we don't have to worry. So we can do whatever the fuck we want to do. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. For the Bobby Pickles podcast in New York City, I'm Bobby Pickles.